Cardinals Insider Podcast for May 2023. Joe and Larry will be along in just a minute. I'm Brett McMillan. We had a great chance to hear from Ozzie Smith and Adam Wainwright last month talking about Cardinal lineage and also what comes next for Waino when he's done at the end of the year. Be sure to check that out, YouTube, Cardinals.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're thrilled today, though. The 2006 World Series MVP, David Eckstein, is here in studio with us. Does that ever get old, hearing that?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's one of those things that, since I've retired, coming up and hearing that, and everyone kind of refers to you as that, it's something very special.
Yeah, and imagine something you probably never growing up, would have thought would have happened to you. What was that like growing up? When did you know you wanted to be a pro ball player?
My mom would tell you that it was basically as soon as I was born. I kind of had like a ball in my hand. I could sit through full baseball games by the age of 2 and not move. It was something that I've always loved. As soon as I could like swing a bat, I had a bat in my hand. As soon as I could play, she was taking me down to the Little League to play. I was always trying to keep up with my middle brother, Rick. He was 2 years older than me, but like she would tell you it was born in me.
And he's become a very important part of our alumni activities here recently, guys.
Huge. And, I think the perfect segue to your alumni experiences here is when we brought you back for Game 6 of the 2011 World Series, and you threw out the first pitch that night. I think we ought to lead with that story.
I didn't realize. Okay, that's pretty neat.
This is one of my favorite stories in Cardinals alumni.
This is appropriate because we'll get to later what your wife does for a living. But
Yeah.
hidden Mickeys throughout Cardinals history. This is a hidden Mickey in
love
Cardinals history. I don't know if we can say that. Legal might make me.
We'll leave it for now.
Yeah,
We're
talking about Mickey Mantle was my dad's favorite player.
Exactly. Well, now I'm intrigued because you won the MVP in the previous one, and then you were there that night, which makes sense, but I didn't know. So what is the story?
So the game of baseball is something that I've always loved. But as you play, you end up seeing a little bit of the backside of it, like the business aspect of it. And it was one of those things that, in 2010, the day before the season started, I went back to my wife. I said, hey, Ash, I think this is going to be my last year. And then during the season, I was actually on a rehab assignment. I was in a hotel room. I had made an error. The only error I made that year, the whole year. I didn't make any in the big leagues. And I'm like crushing myself. And I legitimately pick up the phone. I'm like, Ash, I'm done. I go, this error means absolutely nothing in this game. And it's killing me to the point where, all right, I'm giving them everything, but there wasn't as much in return on the other side, the loyalty back. And so as I step away after 2010, I basically like hid from the game because I had 3 contract offers to go play. I got called mid-season to come back and play. And I got called a week after the season ended to play, but I was just hiding from everybody. I didn't want to go. My brother was a major league hitting coach. I didn't go watch one of his games, did not show up in person. I did get called to throw out a first pitch in Anaheim because it was the 50th year celebration. So I did do one game late. I think it was September. I threw out one pitch and stuff like that. But it was one of the things I just hide. And then I got the call to say, if we go to a Game 6, will you be available? Of course I'd be available. And so I had the opportunity to come out and throw out the first pitch for Game 6. But more importantly, I had the opportunity to go sit up in the stands, and we got to go up in the suite and being able to sit up in the suite, watching down, and then watching what David did, what David Freese did. That ninth inning comeback, the ball he hits right off the glove of Nelson Cruz. All of a sudden, the game's tied when you think that, they've lost the World Series. And then he comes up and hits the big home run to win the game. And just standing up there watching the fans like cheer and watching why the game is so important to me, why this game is what it is. And it brought the little kid back in me. And I promised from that point on that I would never let the business side of the game affect how much I love this game. And I always thank David Freese for coming up in the ninth and then hitting the home walk-off because he brought the love of the game back into me.
Hey, Did you know him at all? Like, I'm trying to think about when he got traded over here for Edmonds. So you never were in camp with him or anything?
Never in camp with him. Never truly crossed path, other than, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that story. You told it on a Zoom last year, but then in person at our fantasy camp just this past September, in September of 22, and I think everybody in that room was in awe because, and David Freese as well, in awe because, you don't know the vast impact that you have in this game, and to be able to impact our former MVP and to bring him back into the fold and feel part of the family and the love of the game again, that really kicked off your alumni stint. And my gosh, I can't believe we're talking 12 years later now. But while you live in Orlando and you and your wife are traveling worldwide constantly, you don't even know what time zone you're in right now. You feel like you're here as often and as active as a lot of our St. Louis guys, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so thankful, like I've always said, having the ability, especially when I started in 2005, I was in the midst of my father needing a transplant. And the city kind of just wrapped their arms around not only me, but my whole family. My mom will even tell a story when she came for the postseason, and she's inside. She was at the mall, and she handed over a credit card. And the lady behind the counter goes, "Can I just give you a hug?" You know what I mean? That's what St. Louis is. She goes, "I've been praying for you, and your family the whole time." And that's something that has been always, dear to my heart and my family's heart. And so having the opportunity to come back, as much as we can. And even the more ironic part about it, my wife's family moved here after I was gone. So I was back here a lot more, even in the off season, just to visit them. And so, this is definitely almost like a second home to my family.
This town is that way, and for those of us who grew up here can attest to it. But once it kind of gets its hooks in you, and I mean this in the most wonderful way possible, but it's just kind of part of you forever. It just kind of is part of the way that it is. I'm glad that you brought up organ donation, even right now. Driving in the other day on Highway 64, Highway 40 here in St. Louis, there is a billboard. You're still very involved. This community is still very involved. But tell us the roots for those who are watching and might not know. Tell us the story. Tell us why it's such an important piece of your heart. Yeah,
organ donation is huge. It has given my family, it's given me back my family first and foremost, and given my family their life. It started with my father, who has passed away, but he had a rare disease that he was going to lose his kidneys, and unfortunately, he passed it on to 3 of my brothers and sisters. So my oldest brother, Ken, and my 2 sisters, Christine. So I was in middle school, and all of a sudden we thought my sister might have had mono. And so we take her into the doctor and stuff like this, and they're like, "Oh no, she was actually in complete renal failure." We always thought she was the lazy one. And so we were sitting there, who would have known that she had basically at that point 0% kidney function, and she was bowling 2 days earlier. Okay, so we had to rush her to Shands, and that just started off the process of oh my gosh, we all got tested, and it ended up 3 of us had the disease and was going to need kidneys quickly. So first and foremost, my mom stepped up. My mom stepped up and donated to my sister. That was back in 1989. And so, but then we knew Kenny and Christine were going to lose theirs in the next 18 months. And Rick and I were too young, because you have to be over 18 years old to donate. So we really wanted to donate, but they wouldn't allow us to do that. And so we found, so in turn, we basically, people that had signed their organ donor cards was able to give life to my brother and sister. And so it started there. And then, my father was able to receive one in 2005 from a family friend. Now it's my oldest brother's wife, gave a kidney. And then Rick was able to donate to Ken again, because his failed in 2010. And so, but it's been something that's just been part of our life. And then, of course, my sisters had children and passed on the gene as well. So we've already had one transplant with one of my nephews when he was just before he was 18 years old, was able to get him a transplant from someone who signed an organ donor card. And that Christine's 2 kids, so Ava and David will need transplants. Then on my sister Susan's side, Ricky will need a transplant. So we have all these things lined up, and so I'm in the waiting to donate. I mean, I thought I thought it would have been much sooner, but because my sister Susan has been in stage 4 of her kidneys for that my mom received since basically 2012, and we've been able to do stuff to hold on to that kidney. But I'm as long as I'm the same blood type, and usually the same blood type you can donate. But then so I'm her match, and then Ash will be. She's O positive, so she can donate to any one of the family members. So we're counting the kidneys and stuff like that. So it's something very important. And then having the opportunity back then to team up with Mid-America Transplant in 2007, we did a drive for 300. And it was for me to hit 300 and get 300,000 people to sign up an organ donor card. And basically that year, we were the 3rd largest region in the United States for organ donation signups. And so very fortunately, Joe reached out to Mid-America last year and said, "Hey, would you like to restart this again?" And they said yes, and I was definitely on board. So now we're
16 years later, we're doing it all over again.
All over
which
again.
Is awesome.
Yeah. But thanks to you, Joe. So.
It's been great.
Talk about perspective. I mean, it's easy to get wrapped up in the course of 6 months in a summer. No matter if you're working on the business side of the game like Joe, Larry, and I, or you're playing the game, it's easy to get wrapped up in what happened last night.
Yeah.
What you just described will keep you grounded in a big way. Do you think that your big league career was what it was in some ways because of what you walked through with your family?
Well, yeah, 100%. 100%. At a young age, to see basically athletic life taken away from my brothers and sisters, and me and Rick having the opportunity to do whatever we want freely, it definitely gave us this greater, we didn't want to take it for granted. And so every time we stepped on the field, we knew it was something that we were going to give it our all, because there's people out there that never will have the opportunity to. So it definitely did, and it keeps you humble. It keeps you like it keeps you in a place where, like, yeah, you can do great things on the field, but does it truly mean something in the game of life? You know what I mean? And so, because you still got to go home at night and, and live that. And that's something that haven't seen what my brothers and sister had gone through, and then my father. It was one of those things I would never take a game for granted. And that's one of the things that you kind of see it when people are hit with, especially like, life and death struggle at an early age, and they see it. You see a different respect on the baseball field with players that have had that in their lives, and you see the way they go about it because they know it could be taken away just at a moment.
Now, that his era, guys, is an era that I think there's really the 2011 team is probably the most beloved of the last 25 years, maybe of all time. The 85 Cardinals, a lot of love for them. 04 and 05, those are the two best teams of my lifetime thus far.
Right.
And 06 is the one that, baseball's a funny game, but that's the one that you guys won the final game on. What are people's responses to him and his era, and just being able to mix in, those guys from those teams and kind of that situated meaning of those 3 summers in baseball history here?
Well, and I think not just that you won, but how you played, especially with David, how you stood in the on-deck circle and didn't really stand still and watch.
Did not stand.
Swinging the bat. And I think everywhere David goes, people recognize the way that he played that made him a favorite of the fans above and beyond winning the World Series.
Yeah, that was such a fun era in Cardinals baseball, and to have him at short and Roland at third, and to have Scott going into Cooperstown this year, that has to be special for you to see your teammate going into the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, I was so happy for him. And the thing about it, I don't know, I'm sure we've all watched the video when he had the opportunity to tell his mom and stuff like that. And you never see Scott emotional. You never see him. And you see that video, and that's who. I mean, that was so special to me. And then I text him, like, can you please stop, because my phone's blowing up. I don't want to do any more interviews about you. It's
because he doesn't want to do the interviews. All his teammates have to do it.
I know. So, but what Scotty did over at third base was amazing. And like I said, being at short, it made my job a lot easier. His range to his left was phenomenal. But I always say, he ate the baseball. He ate the ball. And his preparation, his mindset, the way he went about his game, I'm just so happy that he finally got the highest highest recognition of being a Hall of Famer, because he definitely deserves it. Because I don't know if there's a good third baseman out there right now, but this Scotty, something special about Scotty.
Yeah, he's one of the best two-way players in club history and in baseball history, for my money. We were talking about, David can't walk anywhere in St. Louis without being recognized, but it's funny when you go down to Orlando, that recognition drops significantly, and he can't walk anywhere without his wife being recognized. Talk a little bit about, Ashley got to walk alongside your career for so long. You're getting to do that with her now. How cool is that?
Yeah, no, it's been phenomenal. What many people don't realize was my wife actually stepped away from being an actress because I started getting injured, and I was not the best at doctor's appointments because I just wanted to play. And so I was in Toronto, and she actually moved up there with me, and she couldn't get a work visa. And so she basically had to give up, and all her managers said, hey, if you're not in LA making us money, you're worthless to us. So they dropped her. So she did that for me at that time period, and it was very big for me. Now I get to do that for her. So we just take turns with it. And from starting at that point, she was doing a role called Ahsoka Tano on Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which went on to Rebels, Tales of the Jedi. She was in Rise of Skywalker. So she's done basically everything of Ahsoka except this last live version of her, and if you actually see the character, it really relates with anybody. And I mean, the hashtag now is Ahsoka lives in all of us. But she has built this fan base, and she's truly, I think she's a real life version of Ahsoka. She is Ahsoka to me because that's who the character is her, and she has, just embraced that and has walked. And from that, just the influence that she has to reach so many people. Like we were just in London last week, and if you sit at her table, you just don't even realize the number of people that would walk up there, and not only that she has changed their life, but she has saved their lives because she does a lot of stuff with mental health as well. So when we go to these things, I love it. I call myself the bag carrier. I carry the bags, and that's what I get known as out there and stuff like this. So it's actually pretty cool because her following is pretty massive right now, and I'm just so proud of her.
You strike me as that kind of guy that I'm sure it's nice and it's gratifying to come back here and have people appreciate what you did, but I'm pretty sure when you get on the plane Sunday or Monday or whenever and go somewhere where they don't recognize you, you'll be good with it. What was that like for you as a player, kind of being I'm tagging you as more of an introvert.
Yeah.
What was that like, and how did you deal with, again, just what comes with being a shortstop in St. Louis? Because we've had some good ones in club history.
Yeah, it was something that's something I had to get used to. The thing about it is I held myself to accountability to the fans, and I'm not going to, after the 06 World Series MVP, like Joe and they were saying, you walk around here, everybody recognizes you, and then we go out and start losing in 07. You know what I mean? And I felt like I was letting down every single fan. So that's where I would take it. So it was definitely a little bit difficult for me personally because, these fans mean so much, and they just want you to win, and you want to go win for them, and when you don't, it actually kind of rips you up inside. And so it was a little bit difficult because yes, I love being short. I love not being the center of the attention. I always would joke is Albert walks outside. Everyone goes to me. Everyone, your eyes always go to someone who's taller. No matter if they're famous or not, but you always look at that. But being short and I can fit right in, put a baseball cap on and get. I like that. I always want I joke. I want to be the guy that put people in position so they got interviewed at the end of the game, and then I could go home and not worry about it. That was what that I tried to. That meant I had a good day, and so so it was something that I definitely had to get used to more, especially within St. Louis. But the fans here are just outstanding, and so I don't mean met met a family on the flight this morning. He pulled out a picture he stood next to my cardboard cutout that he had back in 2007, and he had it on his phone. And I actually signed his phone. You know what I mean? And but met his whole family. His son, his name is Henry, is playing baseball now. You know, and so it's just the Cardinal tradition lives on. But that's a Cardinal fan right there.
And when you talk about those fans, you know, and you said you had this dream of playing baseball since you came out of the womb, and what that moment in Game 6 meant to you for your love of baseball. But as you have those dreams throughout your life, and then you're playing in the major leagues, and then you come here as a player, when maybe did it first dawn on you that someday you would be a former player? And when did you first start to realize what it meant to be a former Cardinal and what that still meant to the Cardinals fans here when they saw you?
You can't start thinking about being a former player until you're done. Because once you start thinking that way, you might as well retire right then, because our game is way too hard. Way too hard. But I always say, like, the sense of having the opportunity, like when you coming to St. Louis and winning a World Series, now you're part of history. Because it was history. Like in St. Louis, you're measured on World Series. And they've had so many. And so having the opportunity to do that was you know, knowing that, okay, this will be part of forever. Not realizing, you know, winning the MVP throws it to another level. But the one thing I always say is what you all do here within the community service and bringing back former players. I tell it to all the clubs. I go, that's what every club needs to do, because it reconnects the base with the players of the past. And I played on 4 other teams. They don't have this. And that connection to the fans, and they appreciate, you know, that is something that you saw it when we played. Like I can't even, like, my first spring training, I'm in there and there's Ted Williams, you know, and you're sitting there. I mean Stan Musial.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, sorry about that. There's Stan Musial. You know, I got to meet Stan Musial, and I don't ever ask for autographs. I went up and asked for an autograph for my dad. So I got a Stan Musial ball. And then there's Bob Gibson. I still tell the story about my dad came into a game, and all of a sudden it's like 6:45, and my dad's sitting in Tony La Russa's office with Bob Gibson having a conversation. You know what I mean? That's Cardinal baseball, Cardinal alumni. And then, you know, when I signed, Ozzie Smith, actually, it was a friend of my uncle's. I did not know at the time, and I get a phone call from Ozzie Smith welcoming me to St. Louis. So when you talk about having the opportunity to be a former Cardinal, it's a blessing. It's a blessing, and then now living it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you know, I always look forward to coming back into St. Louis, and luckily, Ash talked you into figuring out a way to get me to fantasy camp.
Yeah. she reluctantly allowed you to come to fantasy camp, and you haven't missed one since.
Yeah.
So it's been phenomenal.
And you're phenomenal at it. You know, we came down a couple years ago to do some stuff for Ozzy's TV show, and I remember we stuck a mic on you.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember this, but we stuck a mic on you, and I thought, okay, I think this will be good.
Oh yeah.
This guy's like he's a world-class talker, and like the nicest trash talker I've ever seen in my life. But you were wearing Rick Ankiel out. Yeah, working the umpires.
Learns all their first names.
Sticking up for his guys.
And I'll tell you, that's one thing that I remembered, your competitiveness. But before the game starts, he walks out to home plate, and the nicest chat with the umpires. Hi, I'm David Eckstein, and they're talking, what's your name? And they're just having this great conversation with him. They're high school umpires, college umpires. They're meeting him. So great to meet you. And then he walks back and tells his whole team, okay, here's their names. And the first time a call doesn't go their way, the whole team is shouting the umpire's name.
I do have a problem with competing. Like, if you put me in a situation when there's winners and losers, yes, I will definitely compete in that. But the thing about fantasy camp is to have fun. And for me, I love to engage everyone there, and I love to make it fun for them. And you know, as we joke, it's not the best baseball you're ever going to see in your life, but
not even close.
But if you engage it in everyone, and I just try to bring the energy to make everyone kind of feel special within the game, and then make the games fun. And so that's something that I do. And if you really know who I am, I mean, my wife will tell you I'm the pot stirrer. So I was the one in the clubhouse, would hear something, say it to somebody else, let them go do it, not knowing that it all transpired back to me. Like, because that's when teams come together. That's when you have fun. And that's fantasy camp at its best.
Yeah, you're a silent assassin at camp for sure.
Yeah.
When I was watching you as a fan, something that always stood out to me was the way you got the most out of the frame that you had, right? And the game has changed a lot. Now we see these monster shortstops. They want something different out of at the plate than they did back in the day. But even in your day, you were a smaller guy to play big league baseball. And I hear Ozzie talk about this a lot, and I'd love to know if this was kind of part of your philosophy. He talks about, you guys have probably heard it, what's in motion stays in motion. And that's how he got to the balls he needed to get to. And that really there was never a bad foot to throw off or whatever. It just, could you get it to first base? Could you turn it at second? For you, with a smaller frame, we talked about you on deck moving that bat. What role did motion play in being able to execute at the position?
I mean, it was huge. It was. I mean, from day one, and my dad never really watched me play that much as a kid. But he said if you wanted to stand out on the field, you got to run everywhere you go. So that's why you saw me run to first base on a walk. That's why you saw me always active. That's why you saw me on defense always, moving and stuff like that, because you want to give the impression there's no other place you want to be than other than on the field right now. So motion was huge for me, and especially, the game has changed now, but like the anticipation of pitch, and knowing, being able to see the signs and anticipation to have that little bit of extra weight on the certain side, was something that was very key, for someone, who couldn't throw on the wrong foot. And everybody might think that I had, my throwing motion is something I never would. I mean, I don't watch myself throw, like, to this day. I get to throw out the first pitch tonight, but oh my gosh, it looks terrible. But it was the way I threw, and so it's the only way I knew how. So, but so the one thing about it was like if you saw me, I was always going to be in motion. Like, and even prior to the game, I wanted to do everything that possibly could happen in a game prior to the game. So that's why you saw all this warm-ups, the jumps, the fake steals. Like, everything had a purpose to prepare me for that game or that next pitch.
The role of routine is interesting to me in the sport of baseball, because everybody we bring in here that sits in this chair, you've mentioned being competitive, you have to be, or you're not going to last at this level. But it seems like everybody's got a routine too. Yeah. How did you craft yours?
So the routine came around, like Libero said, anything that I had done in the game, that had a possibility of doing the game, I wanted to do prior to the game. So it was kind of built around that. So, I mean, in my routine when I started, I wanted to definitely make sure I was loose. And so that started by showing up. When I got here, the first thing you do, you go in the weight room and you do an elliptical or a bike. Then you do a full body stretch. And if I had an upper day, I did upper body. If I had a lower day, I did lower body. And then I went to the cage. And what people didn't realize, like, I had to throw a lot because I was a guy that took like 20 minutes to get loose. So I would throw in the cage by myself. And then I did my whole T routine. Then my T routine was set up to hit the entire zone and how I could be more direct to the ball, short and quick. So that was all my T work. And then I would come back and I wanted to take, all my ground balls in a certain way. Luckily here in St. Louis with Jose, who, the secret weapon, one of the best infield guys I've ever been with, we got to take our ground balls prior to BP, so where we weren't dodging balls. So you really could actually hone in on your craft and make your throws. I forgot. So after I threw, I would go long toss. So I had long toss before I went on the field. Then we did our BP. Come back in, watch all the pitchers, knowing what going to happen, and then re-stretch out the body, go back to the cage for a little bit, go back, sign autographs for like 5 minutes, and then once I did that, there was no more talking till the game started. Did my full body stretch. Did my sprints, so I had to make sure if you saw me, I would like round and touch the foul line like I was rounding a base because that was part of it. Long tossed again because I long tossed twice a day. Never had an arm injury. Never missed a game because of an arm. And so then I had these things because I missed the ball in the first inning at University of Florida. I jumped for it and hit off the tip of my glove. That was the first time I jumped that day. So you saw me do 2 jumps in front of the dugouts because I wasn't going to do that again. And then I had 4 fake starts. Like, so start. And then it was pine tar on the back of the glove, pine tar a little bit on the end of the glove, and then it was time to go play.
So you didn't have any kind of routine.
No.
Oh my gosh.
And that didn't start with the stuff at home. Well, Ash will tell you a funny story. Like, we're sitting there walking, like on one of our first dates, and like we're walking, all of a sudden like miss a step, and she thought I was hurt, and I was like, no, babe, you can't step on a crack. I learned in AA from Wilton Veras that if you step on a crack, you're gonna make an error, and I did that night. I stepped on a crack, and I did make an error that night. So there's no more stepping on cracks.
Wow, that's next level right there.
Was she a baseball person? Did she understand, or
she was a baseball person. She did enjoy the game, and she went to almost, like, once we started dating and got married, she went to almost 1,000 games. So she loved the game and stuff like that. But and the funny thing was she didn't realize of a lot of my quirks at home until after I stopped playing. You know what I mean? And so, I had to line up the shampoos. I had to, eat at some time. You know what I mean? My sister Susan will tell you, she whatever you call it, she came into town and I had, they make fun of me. I had my pajamas on the floor, and I come home and I didn't get a hit that night. I'm like, where am I? She washed them. Don't you know you don't wash your pajamas if you got a hit streak going? And she'll
Everyone
to
knows
this day,
You don't do that, do you?
No, well, I don't have a history going. So
Yeah,
I wash
so
my
yeah.
pajamas.
you
Yeah.
can wash them every night?
Every day. Wash them every
And so,
Although I'm going to try it now.
no, you try. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so there's yeah, I definitely had a routine that was a little insane.
So tell me about, I love asking this question to guys who played for him too, Tony La Russa,
Yeah.
who I just have a tremendous amount of respect for, having been around him a very little bit in this role, but then also having watched most of his Cardinals career. He always has struck me as the kind of guy that I think his players would be the first out of the dugout to defend.
Yeah.
Always respect him. Maybe didn't always like him in the moment. Is that fair? How was Tony to deal with as a player?
Yeah, I definitely would say that for some players. For me personally, it was. I don't think people really truly understood him, and so his competitiveness, the way he went about it, it was almost father figure like, because it was kind of like my dad. So my dad was that more military based. You know what I mean? You keep your mouth shut, you do your job, you show up to win, and that was Tony. So Tony was, don't talk to me, as everyone knows, until the final out. So how's my day going? And he's like, you know what I mean? I'll tell you when we win. And so, because everything revolved around the win and loss that day, but what people didn't really understand about him, the way Tony's mind works. There was a situation. And I forget the total. Also, I forget the total situation. But we were in LA, and all of a sudden, I'm getting taken out of a game, and it was like a double switch and stuff like this. But it was something that Tony had already planned out, and it actually, in the 9th inning, it came up to where that position, it all worked out, and he had already thought it out. And I was like, man, my brain never even went there. And so that's the stuff that people don't know, that realize about Tony. And I loved. When he went back to Chicago, I was like, oh, can he handle, Tim Anderson? He's like, he had Ricky Henderson. Come on, enough said. And then all the sabermetrics. He's old school. Well, who invented the sabermetrics? It was Tony. He matched up in the bullpen, beyond belief.
Oh yeah.
Prior to
For sure.
prior to the matchups, he did all that stuff in his head, and I think that his mind for the game was something that was beyond belief. But there was a soft side of Tony. that people really didn't see. Ash and I always found ourselves, and because he doesn't eat meat, and I would go to a steak restaurant in a random city, and he would always be there reading his book, eating a salad. But he would come over and say hello and then pick up the check. That's Tony La Russa. On an off day, my wife was flying to San Francisco to go to Lucas's ranch, and Tony was going home for the off day. He grabs my wife's bag, puts it up above for her above the seat. Didn't even know. Like all of a sudden, I saw my wife puts her carry-on above them, and then went off the plane, takes down her carry-on, walks her carry-on all the way down the baggage claim, and he didn't have had any luggage. That's Tony La Russa. Like he really cared about the entire family. And that was my experience, and so I'm very grateful for him.
I bet you guys could speak to that too. We've got this great piece of video, one of my first years here, of him petting a Clydesdale, and it is just like this other side of
His
Tony.
His favorite part about opening day.
Yes,
Yeah.
he
Not even
loves
close.
animals.
Yeah.
We all know that, but I think that soft side kind of peeks through a little bit here in retirement. I think more, but I love those stories because you can see that when you talk to him that he's got that side of him. It's not all talk to me at 10:30 and if we won or not.
And he's invested in his guys. I think, Larry, you need to tell a story of the 2011 reunion related to making sure his guys were there.
Oh, yeah. We're trying to get in touch with guys 10 years later, bring them back for the 10-year reunion of that World Series. And some of them, especially a couple of the coaches, hadn't responded to our messages for a while or said, no, I can't make it. And Tony was coming, and one day then he calls to check in and says, by the way, who's coming? And I'm reading him off the list, and he says, what about this guy? What about that guy? No, I called him. He said he couldn't make it. What about this guy? Well, he never responded. We tried a few times. And he said, I'll call you back. 5 minutes later, he calls back. Call this guy, book their flights.
They're all coming.
They're all coming.
Yeah.
I'm like,
wow.
Well, gee. And he says, I'm the manager. That's what I'm supposed to do.
And it means a ton to him. And it hurt him that he couldn't be here on opening day. Due to the health challenges he's got this year. But we're looking forward to hopefully seeing him at some point this summer.
And I think it was maybe when Scott Rowland went into the Cardinals Hall of Fame, Tony La Russa, if I remember that right, he was also going to Oakland for a celebration that they had.
A's celebrate, yeah.
And they were
Reunion.
on back-to-back days, and he wasn't managing the White Sox at the time.
Right.
But he took a red-eye flight because he wanted to be here for Scott Rowland. Got off the plane, came to the ceremony, walked back on the plane, and flew to Oakland, all just to fit Scott's ceremony into a schedule.
Yeah, it means a ton to Tony. I mean, you think about our history, and everybody always talks about the 11 World Series, but I tend to talk more about the 19 NL pennants. So, people want to devalue losing in the World Series, but the reality is you won your pennant, and that meant even more pre all of the balanced scheduling. You're playing the American League all the time. The 19 NL pennants are amazing, and I think about 04 was before you were here, but that team is one of the greatest teams in Cardinals history.
They could score on demand.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All-star team.
Yes.
And I think about the knockout, drag-out, prize fighter, boxing type NLCS matchups we had in 05 with the Astros and then in 06 with the Mets. You couldn't have better series than those two series that you guys played in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean the whole 05. Wow. Albert's ball that he hits, and to this day I still think that we were going to propel to go to the World Series, come back home and win too. And and it was probably one of the times I was in a pretty good depression after the 05, assuming like, oh man, that club in 05, and I know I wasn't here in 04, which had a phenomenal club. I would say the 05 team was the best team I've ever played on.
You just ran into Roy Oswald
on that night, but then in 06, where no one truly expected from us, and that's why I love this game, because you show up and play hard. And anything can happen, and we were just getting healthy at the right time, and then had two young guys, now old guys, were able to step up in the right time with Waino and Yachty, and just magical.
And guys that the average fan wouldn't have expected in Soup, in Taguchi. I mean, just that series is unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, and Anthony Reyes in
Game
game
one.
one, who's a firefighter in California,
Yes, he is.
by the way. He did a little talk with Kyle McClellan on the Chatters box if anybody wants to go check it out. It was really, really interesting. But you had a great seat to that, standing behind him, And I mean, for that guy to do what he did in that spot, also opposing the pitcher that he was opposing, were you, whatever we are now, 15 years out, were you a little surprised? No disrespect to your teammate, but I mean, you have to think this guy's taking this ball in this situation. Like when you walk off the field that night, what's going through your mind?
You got to remember, I had the opportunity in 2002 to give the ball to John Lackey in Game 7. And guys, step up. This is our game. And if you know, I don't know if you remember back earlier, we were getting like just dominated. We got blown out twice by the White Sox. And I think Anthony took the ball on the final day. We lost. I think Tommy hit a home run. We lost, but he dominated that game. All right, like it was in him. It was in him. And so, like, that's why I love our game is the fact that, no one really knew Anthony. And, like, I mean, the matchup was not in our favor. And he went out there and did what he did to give us a chance to get a win. But it's in players. That's why there's a reason they're putting on these jerseys. And so, like, and we had complete confidence. We didn't care who was grabbing the baseball. Like, it was like you know what I mean, you go through our bullpen, you probably couldn't mention, like, outside of St. Louis, you're not going to even know our bullpen. You know what I mean? And they stepped up and dominated. And so that's why I love the fact that Anthony stepped up in Game 1 and really set the tone for us to be able to, become World Series champs.
Yeah, you guys embrace that underdog role. The reality is that 06 team was phenomenal, but you were hurt all year until the NLDS started.
Yeah.
And then you started a roll.
Yeah.
And it just played till the end. I mean, I don't know what the national writer, I'm drawing a blank, which national writer said Tigers in 3.
Oh, yeah.
But, boy, that turned quickly, didn't it?
That was Bob Nightingale.
Yeah, I knew that was. I mean, Tony had all that stuff in the pregame prior to the day before we started playing. I mean, before we left for Detroit, he was like, the story's already written that they win, but let's rewrite the story, And so, but like that's what you love. I mean, I always love being the underdog. I love proving. I mean, people ask, do you miss playing the game? I don't miss playing the game. I do miss proving people wrong. And so so that's one of the things that, having that opportunity in 06 to, no one expected and then win, even though, like Joe was saying, we had the best team when we started the season.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. It might have been the final weekend of the season. Milwaukee was in here, and Scott Spezio ripped a triple into the corner. And it's still the only time I've ever felt a building shake. It really, really did.
Yeah.
To me, that was from the outside perspective. That's when it felt like it started to turn. Yeah. For you guys, when did you go, okay, we are healthy, and I think we've legitimately got a shot here?
Ronnie Belliard's dive in play in San Diego. I was like, okay, it's on now.
Yeah.
It's
one of
on.
those signature moments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Boy. Yeah, but we're talking 17 years ago. It feels like it was yesterday. We are getting up there, but my gosh, I mean, and to think about what it meant to the fans too. We hadn't won since '82.
Yeah.
The whole thing, and the '80s were amazing, but you lose in '85 and '87, and 2 really good NL pennant winners there. But it had been a while for our fans, and they were craving it.
Yeah.
And this place, the first year of this ballpark, just shook.
Yeah.
I mean, the place just shook during those games. It was special.
Oh, it was so special. It was so special. And then, even then the parade afterwards, like I've never seen so many people, and they're hanging from the rafters for all the parking structures and stuff like this. As a player, winning in St. Louis is probably one of the greatest things to happen. And so.
Well, let's end on this. There's the famous story, I'm guessing most people have heard about the car and how it sat in the storage unit. So clearly you're not a memento guy in general, but there's the Sports Illustrated cover. I mean, that had to have been cool. The car. Do you have something you've carried out of your playing career that you keep at the house that reminds you?
Well, Joe's laughing here.
He's got a few things.
I got a few things.
A real
now.
Small area that Ashley designated for him.
Yeah, we bought a new home in 2020, and because I've never when my wife first met me, you know what I mean. She's like, "What's this in the closet?" It was my 2002 World Series uniform. It was on the ground. You know what I mean? I never wanted to be the person that lived in the past because it was always the next day forward. mean, the infamous story is the fact that, leaving St. Louis after winning the World Series and becoming MVP, I get on to the 64, and I have the stadium right here on my right, and I call my dad, because I call my dad after every game. He said, "Congratulations, but David, you understand this? That season's over now. You got to start worrying about next year." So it was something that was always instilled in me that I really did not hold on to anything, but fortunately, my wife did, and so so we bought a new home, and it's basically all Disney, mostly Alice in Wonderland. But there was, when you come in off the garage, they have these. It's a little mudroom, but it was a spec home, but it looks like 3 lockers. So we turned that into, quote unquote, off of Main Street of Walt Disney, Casey's Corner. They made it David's Corner. So I have it. So I have, I have my jerseys from College World Series, Angels World Series, and in the dead center, St. Louis Cardinals World Series. And yeah, so there's some very nice pictures on the wall. I have the bat. Mm-hmm. So probably the prized possession is the bat that I used for the majority of the time that I broke in Game 5. I have that up on the wall, and and
your hit record from the University of the Base.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I have the base.
I think that's one of the coolest things. Just knowing your story and that you walked on at the University of Florida. You should just tell that record.
Yeah. So basically, I did play the first. I had 10 at bats my freshman year, but in 3 years I broke the University of Florida hit record. Mm-hmm. It was surpassed by Mark Ellis because he played all 4 years. But but I only had 2 hits my freshman year because I only had 10 ABs, but basically broke the all-time hit record in 3 years at Florida. Broke and then I had the base was from the most consecutive times on base. I broke that most games on base in Florida. So I have a little momentum. The funny thing about it was like calling my sister Christine, because my sister saved all my stuff because I didn't save anything. So she had all this stuff, and so we were able to kind of put it up in a little bit in a room, and so yeah.
It's pretty nice. It's really cool. David will give tours down in the Orlando area if anybody's interested.
Just put the number up on the screen. No. David,
isn't that supposed to raise money for something?
We'll figure something out.
Okay.
Well, okay, let's do that. If people do want to get involved, we talked about it at the top before we get out of here. If people want to get involved with the cause, there's the billboard, but if they're not driving down 64, where can they go this summer to get involved?
Yeah, it's Mid-America Transplant. So midamericatransplant.org, where they can show up, and hopefully, sign up. That's the biggest thing and spread the word, just spread the word that I know we all feel good right now and healthy, but some things do happen, but you have a chance to actually save someone's life and put a family back together. And that's something that, it's been on my side, of the family that we've been on the recipient a lot. And so, but it really does put a family back together. So if there's, if you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence, please really think about it. And you definitely can make a difference in someone's life just by signing that card.
Awesome. I have no doubt St. Louis will show up in a big way. Cardinal Nation will for that. David, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for sitting down and talking about it. For Joe and Larry and David, I'm Brett. You can get our shows anywhere that you listen to podcasts, YouTube, or Cardinals.com. Again, Ozzie and Wayno to kick off the year. We'll be back in June on the 1st. The 1st of every month is when we come out with another Cardinals alumni. But for right now, that's been the Cardinals Insider Podcast.